But I think that and these things are at opposite ends of the spectrum. Maybe not opposite, but they're at different points on the spectrum, right? Of what inspires us or takes up mental, emotional real estate to then inform our work. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that has happened to me so many times, right?
Yeah.
Reading an article, we just talked about it, Joseph Campbell, these things that just like ignite something in you to inspire you to bring it into your work or whatever. And what I'm really curious about, and I don't necessarily need you to give me any specifics or a specific story, I'm curious with you, the role that dramatic or traumatic or a loss in the family, a breakup, a car accident, just missed having a car, like how have those experiences changed you? Because I'm in this weird place right now, just to give some context. I'm in this weird place where it's sort of like, this is inspiring me to make some work.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, or to communicate what happened. So, for example, coming out of this immediately, like this morning, and I talked about this in the last episode, I kind of wrote something, a poem, a piece, whatever it was, right? That came out of me as a result of this. I would have never sat down and written something like this had this not happened. I also am feeling like I want to talk about it on the internet.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm like, I kind of want to make a video about this. Now, obviously, this podcast is doing that.
Amazing way to contextualize. I want to talk about it on the internet.
There's something in me. And so one question I have, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole too much, is what's motivating it? Is it that phenomenon where something dramatic happens in someone's life, and when they go to work, they want to hijack the lunch hour or the water cooler and be like, well, guess what happened to me, everyone? Because some ego thing is getting you the attention of Matt almost got killed by a 2-pound hunk of metal. And while I'm not aware of the fact that he's telling the story because he likes the attention it generates, his motivation is attention. So I'm like sitting here grappling like, what is the truth of my motivation for wanting to share this story?
It's interesting because like
some fantasy that I'm going to make a video about it and have a clickbaity thumbnail that says that time I almost got killed doing street photography with a picture of a hunk of metal on the ground. Am I motivated to do that because of some bullshit ego thing? Or is there something that I'm working through that there is an authentic desire to share my experience, whether it's warning people to just be careful that this stuff can happen while you're out there doing street photography, that these are sort of the things that you might run into while you die for your art. Yeah. And I put that in air quotes, that kind of stuff.
It is interesting because like you separated them on separate ends of the spectrum. And I do think they might be more similar than they appear at face value. Mm-hmm. But I do think, so I still do this. I complain whenever somebody's like goes out of their way to be like, my so-and-so died. Yeah. Or like my grandfather died or my dog died. And like, you have to be, there's definitely an element to that where I'm being a little insensitive to that person's. I mean, obviously they're going through something and it helps to talk about it. But at the same time, I have very little patience for that. Mm-hmm. And that sounds really bad. But I do, like, through my eyes or my subjective experience, that whenever somebody does that, it is like they are serving a need for attention. Yep. And like if you're like, this terrible thing happened to me today, mm-hmm. or this da-da-da-da-da, you're trying to get my sympathy and attention. Yep. And you're doing it, you're doing it in a cheap way. Yeah. On top of doing it. Yeah. So like that double frustrates me. Right. I'm like, you're going for a cheap laugh, right? You're going for the dick joke. Mm-hmm. Comparing like Death in the Family to dick jokes, but so part of it, like, I don't see there's the exploring the idea of like, man, this happenstance scenario came into my life and I'm exploring what that means to me.
Yep.
Whether it's through art or whatever, I think that is important. Mm-hmm. And I think but necessarily, I do think there isn't when the want is, I want to go public, and this is just one person's opinion.
Yeah.
I want to go public with this because of this, like talking about, time is luck, like we did in the last episode, or talking about like, the, like there's certain takeaways I think from that story that are just good takeaways, general takeaways. And then there is an element to it though, I'm sure, where it's like my dog just died.
Right.
And I want to tell you about that so I can get your sympathy.
Yep.
I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but I'm just saying, I think from human experience, like there's a level of, and I don't know, maybe I am just a little more closed off to that because at the end of the day, is it better for that person to hold that in and not share that? Maybe not. I think it's just a lot of advertising and a lot of the things that we despise in this are going for the cheap thrill.
Yep.
And like almost dying is something that, while incredibly moving to when it happens to a person, it's something that there's not a lot of nuance or there's not a lot to figure out there. Like you have life, you almost lost it.
Yep.
Like we've been going through that for everybody. Literally everybody's going to go through that at some point, and they're either going to not lose it or they're going to lose it.
Yep.
Everybody that's ever existed has in the history of the world.
Yep.
To this point.
Yep.
And, so it's like trying to find the deeper nuance. I think that there's a usefulness to that.
Agreed.
But personally, whenever something tragic or potentially tragic or just dramatic happens, I try to, I told Audrey about this last week where like I was writing something. I was like, I really want to read this to you or like get you to read this and like hear but I was like, but every time I do that, I detach myself from it. Yeah. And I don't want to work on it anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Or I start to like
the fact that you gave it to her causes the detachment, when she gives you what she feels about it.
No, then just you the fact it's like I don't like sharing ideas with people a lot.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like. I think feedback is valuable, but I don't like sharing ideas because I'll share an idea, and then it just like kills the motivation for me to continue to flesh the idea out.
Yeah.
And that it's a bad. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. You should put a judgment on it.
So it's like
it's just what happens.
Yeah. So my reaction if something life changing happened would be, I'd want to talk about it pretty instantly.
Yeah.
But then I've almost had to train myself. And I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. This is just what I've had to do. Is like I've had to train myself to be like, there's layers beyond what you're looking at right now.
Yep.
And you want to react to this. This is the thing that you just wrote that you think is great and you want to show everybody.
Right.
This is the photo that you just took that you want to share with the world. You're going to feel differently about this. And if you let it out, then it is like, when you finish a piece of work and you release it, it becomes not yours anymore. It's everybody else's.
Yep.
So that's why the motivation dies. So I mean, like in specific scenarios, I can't say like, I mean, I've had some things happen in the last year that I've had to sit with. Yeah. And be like, okay, I need to, how does this work into what I'm working on? And, I don't know. I mean, I feel, I don't have a.
Well, I think, and what I want to talk about is like just sort of like.
I do think there's an element of ego to something like that, though.
100%. Because one of my first thoughts after it happened was, and this is this too, I always look for these experiences to externalize character. What are some of the hardwired, reflexive, instinctive reactions that you have to things that are very out of the ordinary?
Yeah.
How do you handle it?
Well, and what was so fascinating to me when last week you were talking about that story, you started trying to break down his logic.
What's the story?
The story about the guy throwing the thing.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Gotcha.
You started trying to like dissect his logic.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's because, you know,
right.
Some people are going to react more on the emotional side, and you're like reacting on
that's right.
It's the writerly thing to do, right?
Yep.
you're
the
going
dramatist.
in and what are the motivations? Like,
and that comes from the power of myth.
Yeah.
This guy, like,
it's easy.
It's easy to stamp him as this villain, but I'm curious about the whole context of his life that led up to him deciding to grab a 2-pound hunk of metal and come try to kill me.
And it's you know,
especially if he's not insane.
You kind of nailed it, because the problem that we have, that this is why I get so, this is part of the reason I get so flustered when people, oh, my dog just died, or oh, that is, you're stamping it.
Yep.
Right then and there, you're stamping it. Bad.
Yep.
Sad.
Yep.
You're using these you're
labeling it,
lazy emotions to label these things, and then you're not exploring them any further because, okay, well, talked about that.
Yep.
Sad, and I feel, you know, I want attention.
Yeah. There's no nuance.
Stamp it, send it on. There's no nuance. There's nothing.
No
you're
gray
not
area.
Learning anything from it.
Yep.
And I think, especially as people that are trying to create work, or, you know, trying to create something that teaches you more about how the world is, you know, call it art or work or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
I like to use the word work, but
yep.
I think it should be our job to fight against that urge to just stamp it. Bad, scary, death, move on. And because I think, like, when you sit and, like, you trying to find how that externalizes character, or you trying to look at it like, okay, my first thing was like, oh man, that was a bad guy.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people that are not going to be able to go past that. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to get past that layer of that guy was evil. Like, we were watching the Zone of Interest movie, and the people behind us were like bad, like this is just, you know, this is karma, or like bad. And it's like, that might have been what Glazer was thinking, but he at least had that didn't project into the film. I don't think that it wasn't like he just put that out there. He's like, bad. And, you know, he restrained himself from doing that. And because of it, you get so much more out of it than just like good and, you know, the people that think in those terms of just good or bad, good or evil, happy, sad, they need things that challenge them, because the only way to get past that, like you said, they need something to unlock it for them.
Yeah.
The only thing that's going to unlock it is the process of somebody exploring deeper. And that's the most uncomfortable thing, right? That's sitting down with the blank page and being like, okay, here's the obvious emotion. Now, what else is here?
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.